And naturally, I'm a Tottenham man, obviously. I can reflect back to being a player with and manager of some of the finest players that have ever been in the game.
The place is fantastic, the tradition of this club.
To be the manager of 3 cup-winning teams here, I'm so lucky, it's untrue.
Hotspur America podcast, airing every week during the English Premier League season.
What a glory, glory night at White Hart Lane. This great and historic football club.
Joyful night down the Tottenham High Road.
Hotspur America, the original US-based podcast dedicated solely to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Is Gascoigne going to have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, he's there! Schoolboy's own stuff.
I hate Arsenal, just hate them.
Oh, what a goal! Unbelievable! Wow, this is incredible.
We're the Yids in America.
Dibs is there to tap in.
What a fantastic run! He scored! And it's turned home, Eric Dyer.
This is your Hotspur America.
Season 4, Episode 14 of the Hotspur America podcast, and it is a very special podcast. I'm here with Vass, and I'm here with Tim, and we've got a very special guest. Before we get started, this podcast, as they all are, is brought to you by our friends at Community Beer Company. Try one of their public ales, the perfect pint to enjoy with your mates. And as I said, a very special podcast. Today marks the release of Guillem Balagué's new book. It's called Brave New World, Inside Pochettino's Spurs, and we are delighted, to say the least, to be joined by Guillem Balagué himself. Guillem, thank you so much for being here. I imagine you've had a crazy day already. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you for calling, and yeah, it's been a crazy few days, weeks, really, because even though we are talking on the day of release of the book, but as you can imagine, there's so much that goes into it, from the little detail to the big one. For those interested in publishing, we can go into it later, but yeah, it's just time consuming, but you know, that's what it's all about. I'm absolutely loving it.
Well, you admit in the acknowledgments of the book that it made a lot of sense for you to be the author of a book on Mauricio Pochettino. You grew up in Barcelona. You're an Espanyol fan, right?
That's right.
You spent a considerable amount of time living in Liverpool. You've written a book on Rafa Benitez' 04-05 Champions League winning team. You've got a deep understanding of Argentinian football and Argentinian culture. You wrote the official biography of Leo Messi. You've written about great managers. You've interviewed scores of them. And you've written your award-winning book on Ronaldo. So yeah, we'd absolutely agree with you. It makes perfect sense for you to write a book about Poch. Somebody should probably write a book about you. But nonetheless, I mean, we're talking about a manager here who's a pretty private guy, and who works for an even more private chairman. So we're dying to know, how did this all manage to come together, and who was receptive in this process, at least initially?
If you want to write a book about private people and a private club, you better start about 20 years earlier. And that's more or less, well, maybe not 20, but certainly 10, 15 years earlier, when I was in love with Pochettino and his team at Espanyol. I needed to know who this guy was, and by then I was already working for Sky, but I was spending my time between Spain and England, and every chance I had, I would go to see Espanyol. I think a lot of Spurs fans, Southampton fans will recognize what I'm talking about. It was a young team. We lost, we won, we played well, we played bad, but there was something special being built there with guys that were 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that sooner rather than later we became familiar faces, and in the forefront of all that there was a guy with a lot of passion and a vision. Now, you don't get that all the time. You get a lot of managers that come and go, and those that focus in on winning. For him, it was something else. I bought the whole thing. I bought the philosophy. So I got to know him, and I soon realized that he was very ambitious, that there were other steps he wanted to take in his career. I remember, actually, I don't think I told anybody this, but I asked him, he asked me, he said, how do you imagine my career going, right? And I said, well, you're at Espanyol, you take us to the Champions League. This is only second season at Espanyol, having saving us from going down. He says, you take us to the Champions League, and then, of course, Atletico Madrid sees how good you are and takes you away, and then you do well with them, and then you go to Europe, to a team in England or Italy. But then you come back to Espanyol and you take us to the Champions League again. And he looked at me and said, what a mediocre career you think I'm going to have. And I'm like, clearly it was an Espanyol fan talking. I was like, no, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, Liverpool, da-da-da. And I think he identified more with that, or the second version of his future career. So yeah, it was something special created there. And then, we never talked about books or anything else, but recently, when I went to take the first copy of the book, still warm, out of the oven, I went to his house and took it to him and Karina said, look, 10 years ago, we decided that if anybody was going to do a book, if ever there was an opportunity to do a book, it would be you doing it. So without me knowing, destiny came my way, and I'm so proud of it.
So why do you think Pochettino wanted to do a book now? What about this moment, this point in his career? Why do you think he was receptive to it at this period?
Well, let me continue with how this book came about, because he'll answer that. So I did my Rafa Benitez book, and then 5-6 years later, Pep Guardiola, and then Messi. In the middle of that, the illustrated history of Barcelona, the official book, and then Cristiano. And then what do you do next? This is 2 years ago. Who would you say, right, somebody who's interesting to immerse into for a couple of years, who is progressing but will continue progressing? So 2 years later, when the book comes out, still makes sense. And there's somebody within Orion, which is the publishers that have been so loyal to me, said, look, I'm a Spurs fan, and I think what's happening at Spurs, and this is, remember, 2 years ago, is special. And I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, Pochettino. I believe in him. I believe in where he's taking you. So I mentioned it to him, and he went like, yeah, right, okay, well, we'll see. Anyway, anything else? And then Karina, his wife, said to him, look, if he wants to do a book, you have to do it. So he told Mauricio what he had to do. So I went back to Mauricio and said, so should we do it? And he said, Karina says we have to. So that explains why he did the book. He doesn't, he didn't particularly think about the timing or if it's worthwhile, or he just felt, okay, I'm involved in this project. Karina wanted me to do it, and it's like, let's go and see what happens. And next to it, there's a lot of mystery about Pochettino, how he works, what kind of relationships he develops with players, with the media, with the family. How about the parents? Where does he come from? So obviously it was a big gap to be filled, and that was my way to convince him. Let me explain who you are. And all came about 2 years ago. And the timing, to be honest, of publishing now couldn't be better in the middle of the Madrid ties and with a team that's progressing. And you do not calculate that. You don't know when. In fact, it's 1 month delayed because I couldn't finish it on time. So the timing has just been, we've been lucky with the timing.
So how did you come to decide on the structure of this book? Because it's not your typical biography. You go through a single season at the same time intertwining Pochettino's background and his life into this short time period. How did you come to decide about how to structure it this way?
Well, I first write for myself. So every book has been a bit different. So the Season on the Brink on Liverpool, it was also a following of the season mixed up with the game, with the Champions League final. So you had because they were parallel stories, both of them, the season and the game, but they were similar as well. They both were a game on the edge. So I decided to do it that way, including a chapter for anybody who's read it, chapter 8, which is just a bunch of people talking to each other as if I had put Ancelotti, Rafa Benitez, Xabi Alonso, Steven Gerrard, Gattuso, and the referee in the same room around the table, and they were talking about what happened at halftime. So always trying to entertain myself in the way I write. With Messi, there was parallel to his story, the story of Argentina. If he was born in Australia, and he almost did get born in Australia, would he be the Leo Messi we know? And he wouldn't be. So you had to explain what is football for Argentinians, etc. So there's a history and sociology next to it. With Ronaldo, it was the parallel story of the book itself and his story, but with how the book came about and why he put a post in his Facebook account, 100 million at the time, where he wanted to take me to court. So that's the start of the book. And this one was like, okay, well, what can we do a bit different? And then I decided to do a biography in the first person. But at the same time, the best way of doing that, I felt, was a diary of the season, because it allowed you to jump from historical moments to whatever is happening to him. And I think one of the mysteries is to find out how he works. And by doing the diary, which is really, as he explains at the beginning, is his diary, but it's not his diary. It's a bunch of conversations I've had, which I put all that together. By doing it this way, it will just allow me to give so many layers of who he is and how he works.
I think the publication of biographies and this type of book, sort of mid-career, I don't know if it's dangerous, but there's a fear in amongst fans in particular of possibly upsetting the apple cart. Or, you know, Mauricio's still on the journey. He's still creating something at Tottenham and halfway up his career ladder, as it were. And you, being a journalist, probably understand the role and the power of the press in football, particularly in England. So did you not have any concerns, perhaps, that the candid stories that were shared in the book, particularly of some challenges and maybe falling out with players, would end up with Mauricio having more to lose than gain? Especially as he's been through this great ride at Spurs so far and has yet to win anything.
I'm so glad you asked me that question. Because I've read people saying that, and people contacting me and saying, you know, is it the right time? And you know, including journalists, which is quite surprising, because a journalist saying, you know, is the timing right? I came back, one particular one, I said to him, look, next time you interview Jose Mourinho and he gives you something, think about timing. Think about if, or warn you, or you just publish because you just got the interview. And there is, of course, something to say about timing and mid-career and all that, but whoever thinks that by publishing a book right now is going to affect in any way whatsoever the developing of the site, it means they have no idea how Pochettino works and the solid foundations that this project is on. If a book is going to get the whole thing off the rails just because we've explained how he works, we've explained the way he works, how he thinks, he's done that to explain it to you, so you know how he works, to explain it to the media, to the world, so everybody now knows a bit more about him. If anybody thinks that by doing this with him, because it's a project that we've done hand in hand, that and it's going to change anything at all, everything that he's doing, is just not knowing what he is like, what the project is like, and needs to read the book. Because when they do so, I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but they may be thinking, wow, the foundations of this is very solid. The synergy between Daniel Levy and him is massive. The best synergy that Daniel Levy's had with anybody. That's why he says at the end of the book, I want him to stay for 15 years. And they're also happy with it, not in terms of how well they look in the book, because I think I also explain him admitting that he's made mistakes and so on. And as you said, there's one or two clashes which he explained in detail. But it's all that put together out there. Some may think is controversial. Spurs, who, as you described earlier, is logically as a club conservative and don't want to leave too much out, don't want to put the doors too open. They're going to put it in the shops. It's a book that is not an official book. It's not a Pochettino book. It's not a Spurs book, and it's going to the Spurs shops from today. So it is a glimpse of what he is. It is opening doors. It is opening windows, as he says with his own handwriting at the beginning. I'm not used to this, but okay, let's go into this journey. And at the end, he says, "Wolf, too much wind. Let's close the doors and let's close the windows. I hope you enjoy this ride." And that's what he's doing. For that to suggest that, oh my God, the balance will be broken, is not to understand what he's about.
Well, I've read the book, and I couldn't agree with you